After days of discussions, the United States says it is now ready to support a new United Nations resolution for Gaza, where the UN says there is a growing risk of famine. The apparent diplomatic breakthrough at the Security Council comes as Israel intensifies its bombardment of the Gaza Strip in both the north and the south, making the delivery of aid increasingly difficult. A new UN report is warning that more than 500,000 people, a quarter of Gaza's population, now face extreme hunger. We'll have more on that in a moment, but first, let's hear from Washington's ambassador to the UN, who has expressed optimism that a new Security Council vote on Gaza can now go ahead.
We have worked hard and diligently over the course of the past week with the Emiratis, with others, with Egypt, to come up with a resolution that we can support. And we do have that resolution now. We're ready to vote on it. The draft resolution is not watered down. The draft resolution is a very strong resolution that is fully supported by the Arab group, that provides them what they feel is needed to get humanitarian assistance on the ground.
For more, I'm now joined by DW Middle East analyst Shani Rosanes. Shani, welcome.
Hi, Yash.
The US has been the main objector to this resolution thus far, but now it appears it is on board. What has changed?
Well, there were two main contention points. The first one was about calling Israel for a ceasefire. That was the initial intent in this resolution. American diplomats and the president himself have been adamantly against it all through the last weeks of fighting. They managed to carefully work around that with calling for conditions that will allow some sort of relief in the hostilities in order to bring in the aid, which is the second most problematic point on what would be the mechanism of bringing aid in. This was the main goal of back and forth negotiations on the last day, mostly between Cairo and Washington, because Egypt is the main partner for the issue of aid. This is the border with Gaza through which most of the aid convoys come through. It seemed to finally maybe found a solution that everybody can agree on: Egypt, Israel, the Americans, and of course the UN, other members who are all voting for this resolution.
That point about aid was a major part of this resolution that has been in discussion for quite some time. And now we have a UN report which is warning of possible famine in Gaza. What does that say about the state of the humanitarian situation in the territory?
It's dire. Things are really, really bad. I mean, we see the numbers piling up. We see Gaza used to have, in normal days before October 7th, around 500 trucks coming in. Now we're talking on a good day of about 200. And that's not even taking into calculation the fact that there were weeks that there was nothing coming in. In addition, there's a whole discussion of who gets access to that aid once it's in Gaza. We hear complaints of people saying Hamas takes some of it without letting us in. There's talks about how convoluted the whole process is, how hard it is to get all the aid equally transferred, because it makes it to the south of the Gaza Strip, and so it's very hard for people in the north to have access to it. There's need to be more work into bringing aid efficiently into Gaza.
Now, Israel, in the middle of all of this, has vowed to essentially continue fighting until the end, until Hamas is eliminated. I'm quoting Benjamin Netanyahu there. And Hamas says that there has to be a ceasefire before we can even talk about releasing any more hostages. Given that those are the positions on both sides, even if the UN resolution passes in whatever form, what is the hope that either side will follow it?
Unfortunately, this resolution will not be the one making the difference on the ground. You know, Israel is part of the UN, but is not taking too seriously any isolation or international threat of such isolation, because it has American backing still. And Hamas, who is also acknowledged as a terror organization by Israel, by the US, by the EU, many other countries around the world, they do not play according to the international standard rule book. So eventually it comes about the meeting of interest. Is Hamas feeling that taking some time off and releasing some of the hostages is going to benefit him? And the same thing for Israel. Is Israel willing now to take a step back from fighting into putting forward the hostages situation? So far, there seems to be a deadlock when it comes to this issue. And we're not expected to see anything different in the next days in Gaza, unfortunately.
DW Middle East analyst Shani Rosanes, thanks very much for coming to the studio and breaking that down for us.
You're welcome, Viraj.